get started. Welcome everyone to this week's community show. We will be discussing the LCA evolution, smarter deployments, greater control. Saurabh Agarwal and Pratik Kati will be presenting today. If you can go to the next slide, please. As always, as you know, these sessions are recorded and posted to community. They should be posted within 24 hours. For today, we ask that any questions that you have, you post just into the chat. We may not have time for the Q&A, so if we do not, we will send a follow-up email that will answer all of your questions. And with that, I will pass it over to Saurabh and Pratik, who will present.
Thanks, Shara. Hi, everyone. This is Saurabh, and I'm a product manager at LTO. I look after LCA, DVF, and cleanse features. Also, I look after the core APIs, the data unification bits, survivorship, and so on. And the agenda for today is that we're going to discuss about the LCAs. We'll start with a brief overview, but what we want to discuss in more detail is like we're moving from the native LCAs, which are hosted on Reltio's environment, where you create your code and you give it to Reltio team. We do the review and then we host it for you in Reltio's environment. But we are moving away from that structure to cloud supported functions. So basically, we are giving you that flexibility and that control to create your own LCAs, deploy it in your environments, manage it completely on by yourself. So you don't need to involve Reltio in this entire process. We'll have a way to call your LCAs, call your codes, and execute it without any further involvement from Reltio team. So let me first start with just an overview of what Reltio is. So Reltio stands for Lifecycle Action. Basically, it's a framework that allows you to execute custom code uh, during the life cycle of an object in Reltio. For example, if let's talk about an entity. You're trying to create an entity, but before the entity gets created, you want to execute some additional code. You want to check whether this entity already exists or not. It should get a unique ID that you're generating from some other system, and you want to bring it into Reltio. So any of these additional processing, which is currently not supported out of the box with Reltio, you can create your own code, execute that code, and you can in Reltio you can define when that code has to be executed. Is it before saving an entity or after saving an entity, or before merge, after merge? So all of these different hooks in the platform from where you trigger the Reltio, we have a set of these like 32 such hooks where you can configure your code to be executed. So LCA basically gives you the flexibility or control to execute your own logic on top of what Reltio already supports. So right now we support two kinds of LCA implementations. The first one is the native LCA, or a legacy way of supporting these LCA functions, where you create the code, you share the jar file with Reltio and your code. We review that code. We try to identify if there are any security concerns, if there are any performance issues with that code, and then we give you feedback. Based on that feedback, you improve the code, you share it with Reltio again, we review it again. So, it's a multi-step process to and fro where we review your code, we validate and certify that the code is good enough for deployment, and then we deploy the process, and then we deploy the code. So, it's a legacy way of doing things, which is time consuming for you, time consuming for us, and a lot of effort which gets wasted in this to and fro, and the support team getting involved and so on. So that is why we want to get away from that process. And now what we are suggesting is that we we start building our LCAs as cloud native functions. We started with Lambda on AWS cloud, but we now support all three cloud native functions. So you can have your code created as Lambda functions or Google functions or your functions, and we can call that code from Reltio and execute it while the code still resides in your own cloud. The reason that we are doing this is because when your code, your custom code that you've created, which is unless it is certified by Reltio, this code we have to ensure that this code is performant because we have a shared environment where multiple customers use the same compute plane. So we have to ensure that the code is performant. It does not impact the performance of performance that we guarantee to other customers, or it does not have any security issues that might impact other customers. So that is why we have this whole certification process in between. Now, with this, when we move to cloud native functions, we are actually, completely removing that certification process. These cloud native functions, they run in your own environment, completely segregated, not overlapping with any other customers. So we do not run into those risks of performance or security concerns, and that is why there's no certification process that is involved. uh, when to use LCAs. So basically, one thing to understand is LCAs are synchronous functions. So what it means is uh, it does not wait for the complete operation to get complete, or the complete entity or object operation to complete before executing it. It happens while the object is in the process of execution. So if it's a before save LCA, what it means is that before saving the entity or before saving the relationship, depending on your requirement, we execute that code. So any code that you write, depending on how complex it is, how lengthy it is, it will impact the performance, right? So because this is asynchronous, so it impacts the total time it takes to complete the execution. So what we suggest is that if your requirement is not synchronous, if your requirement or if what you need can be managed through an asynchronous process, maybe there are better ways to do it instead of LCA. Maybe you can think about RIH based integration. And also, we are continuously improving the platform, right? We're building in new features, we build new types of DVFs or the features that we support. So maybe you have to continuously look at the new features that are coming up. Maybe some of these features will remove your need to execute an additional LCA or to build an additional LCA. So what we'll suggest is that you also continuously review the new features which are coming up, and then decide whether you still need the LCA, and if not, then just get rid of LCA to avoid that additional uh, performance or performance impact and additional latency. And like I was explaining earlier, the whole reason that we want to move away from cloud native functions is because we want to support you with quicker deployments. Once you deploy, then if the LCA is not functioning appropriately or is throwing errors, then you need to look at logs. If you need to look at logs again, if it's a native LCA which is hosted on Realtia's platform, then you again need to create a support team. The support team will extract the logs, share it with you. You need some more logs because you ran some more testing. So all of this process is becoming very complicated and very time consuming, a lot of wasted effort for both customers as well as Realtia. So we want to get away from all of that. And that is why we are recommending to build your cloud native functions and use that as LCS. Again, a quick comparison between native LCS and the cloud functions. I think the overall idea is what we've already discussed is that with cloud native cloud functions, you have a lot more control. You manage your LCAs the entire life cycle yourself. So there's no dependency from Reltio support team or the Reltio engineering team to do that. So it gives you more control and more flexibility. And that is the whole idea that we want to bring with cloud function LCAs. All right. So with that, hopefully everybody has seen a couple of email communications that we sent out in last couple of months. We are going to deprecate the support for native LCS with our 25.2 release, which was 24th October 2025. We will not entertain any new native LCA support. So basically, if you're creating any new native LCA, a recommendation is to stop that immediately and do it only as cloud native function that you will host on your own cloud accounts. I also want to mention that we do support cross cloud uh, implementation. So if if your Realty account is on AWS, whereas your all of the other systems or the system that you want to integrate with Reltio is on, say, Azure, we can still do that cross account or cross cloud integration. So starting 25.2, 24th October, no new native LCAs, and the native LCAs will be fully retired on 31st August 2026. So basically, you still have like 8-10 months to plan the migration, to move your native LCAs to cloud functions, to get approvals for supporting like whatever internal processes that you have in your organization, to ensure that you're able to continue running those LCAs without any impact to your business. Any existing native LCAs that are already running on Reltio platform, we'll continue to support it. If you need to make updates to those native LCAs, we'll continue to support you for that, uh, for those requirements. But any new native LCAs will not be supported. And to help our customers and to help you guys to do that migration easy, a team is currently working on automation scripts to with minimal effort, so that with the minimal effort you're able to migrate all of these native LCAs sitting on Reltio's platform into your own cloud functions. We'll help you with that migration, make it completely seamless for you. I think the only thing that we'll need from you is to ensure that the authentication works between your cloud account and Reltio, so that we can call that cloud function. But we'll try to make it as seamless and as simple for you as possible. We already have detailed documentation around the best practices and how to do that migration if you want to do it yourself. But if you still have any questions or you still need support, reach out to Reltio support team. Our engineering team is here to ensure that the Reltio support team is able to help you with all your questions and all the issues that you're facing. Right now, it is still a manual process. Basically, you have to create a ticket for the support team if you need help. But we are also working on some automation, which will make it a single click process. I mean, you'll have to provide some details. For example, what is your cloud account, authentication related details. But the whole idea is that with a single click, we are able to connect to the LCAs that are residing in your account. So that is something that will come up soon. Also, we'll continue to have these kind of sessions, webinars, and meetings with the customer. If there are any issues that you face during the migration, our team is again here to support you, to help you go through that migration process seamlessly. All right. With that, I'll hand it over to Prateek to explain all of these different functions and give you a quick demo. All right, Prateek, over to you.
Uh, thank you, Saurabh. Hi everyone. So I am Prateek, and I am from LCA DVF clients team. So I work as associate software engineer there. So I'll just give some quick demos for all three LCAs, Lambda LCA and Google Function LCA and Azure Function LCA. So before directly jumping into demo, we'll just understand a few basic terminologies and some small theory, so that we can understand like how all the invocations happen, how connectivity is happening in all three LCAs. So I'll start with Lambda LCA first, then I'll show the demo for Lambda LCA, then Google Function LCA, then at the end I'll end it with Azure Function LCA. So in Lambda function LCA, so we use assume roles to establish cross-account connections. So in this, what happens is, so we create a role on our side, and a customer will create a role on their side. So Reltio's role will assume customer's role, and after assuming the customer's role, it will invoke the customer's Lambda function, which is hosted in their account. So this is done using STS actually. So what we do is we first get STS token for the customer's role, temporary credentials using STS. And once we get the temporary credentials, we just try to invoke the customer hosted Lambda function using the temporary credentials. So I'll just like show some. I'll just show you the steps that customers need to perform to use Lambda function LCS, and I'll also show a few small. I mean, some small configuration parts also. So first thing would be to create a Zendesk ticket. This will be similar for all LCAs for provisioning LCA. So here you can give basic details like tenant ID and environment name where your tenant is running. So these details will be used in creating tenant specific role or tenant specific service account or app registration, which I'll show how it would look in the further slides. So once you create a Zendesk ticket, then the next step for you would be to create a role on your account. So after creating a role, so you have to give necessary permissions for it so that it can execute Lambda function, which is hosted in your AWS account. And once that is done, you can share your role created in your account with Reltio, so that Reltio can use that role in permission policy of Reltio's role. So once you share your role, so Reltio will start doing configurations. So first it will create a tenant specific role and share it with you. So this is how a tenant specific role would look like. So in this role, you would see the environment ID and the tenant ID. So this role will be specific to the tenant. So you can't use this role in some another tenant or some another environment. So there are some validations in place in the platform which won't let you add this role. So once a Reltio shares you this role, so the next step for you would be to update the trust policy of the role which you created. So you just have to add Reltio's tenant specific role in the trust policy, so that when Reltio's role comes and tries to assume your role, so it will be allowed. So once this is done, you can just inform Reltio that this part is done, that you have updated your trust policy, and Reltio will update the physical configuration after this. And you can once Reltio informs that physical configuration updation is done, you can deploy your Lambda functions, and you can update L3 configurations also. So there are multiple validation steps in this validation checks in the steps. So one is in physical configuration, where we try to get temporary credentials from your account. So if there is any issue in the policy or any issue in our permission policy, then we will get to know here. And the second check is in the L3 configuration updation. So here we try to invoke the Lambda function. So if there is any Lambda permission issue in your role, or if there is any other issue, then we will get to know here. So if we don't have any issues, then if the updation doesn't throw any errors, then we can use a Lambda LCS. So this is one more optional feature in Lambda LCA, which is called as external ID. So this is like an additional security for the cross account connection. So if you want this, then you will add it in the uh, trust relationship policy, and share it with the Reltio, so that Reltio can update it in the physical configuration. So in the next few minutes, I'll show like how to update the trust policy of your role, and deploy Lambda function, and maybe update L3 configuration. And maybe we'll just do a simple LCA call, and we'll check how it is working. So I have already created a role actually. So we'll just try to update the trust relationship policy of the role. So let's assume this is the customer's role, and so they can come to the trust relationship tab and click on edit policy. So here they can just replace the under principal, they can add the tenant specific role which is shared by Reltio. So once this is done, they can update the policy and let LTO know that the updation is done. If they want to add external ID also, then they can add external ID here and inform our LTO so that we can update the physical configuration as well. So once this is done and physical configuration is updated, and if there are no errors, then you can proceed to deploy your uh, cloud Lambda function. So deploying Lambda function is also pretty simple. So it is just a few clicks. So you just navigate to Lambda and click on create function. So here you can give any name, my function test, anything. And the runtime is Java 21. So this is the runtime which Reltio recommends. And you can just keep all other settings as default, or if you want to change something like role or anything else, you can change it here. So the default settings, using the default settings, I'll click on create function. So it is. So once this is created, I'll show how it would look. Sometimes it, because I have already created one. Uh, So this is how Lambda function would look. So this is a simple, I mean, the basic. Right now, uh, we haven't added anything here. So this is a raw Lambda function. So what you have to do next is, so once the Lambda is created, you have to build the custom logic and upload the jar file to this Lambda function. To build the custom logic, we already have few samples present. So this lifecycle samples repo is publicly available, and it has samples for all different LCAs, Lambda, Google, and Azure functions. So you can refer these samples, or you can build your logic on top of these samples. And to build this, first you have to clone this. I have already cloned it once, and this is how it would look in structures. So currently, I'm trying to use one simple sample logic, which is full name builder. So I'm using before save hook, and so what it does is it takes first name as at first name attribute and last name attribute, and builds a full name, and then uh, creates a new attribute called as name and returns it. So I have also added a small validation check just to show you like how validation from LCA would look. So in Lambda LCA, if we try to give last name as GCP LCA, it will throw a validation error saying, hey, I'm not Google or Azure Function LCA, I'm Lambda LCA. So similar case with Azure LCA and Google Function LCA also. Here it says I'm not Google or Lambda, I'm Azure. So these are the overall functionality is same. It is first it what it does is it does full name. It is a full name builder with some small validation. So coming to Lambda, so once you build this POM, so here you can remove the unnecessary POMs, unnecessary modules. So if you are only using Lambda, you can remove Google, Azure, and native, and use build only Lambda. So once you finish building the Lambda repo or parent POM, so you will get two jars basically. So one will be with the dependency jar, and other one will be the normal jar. So for all the for cloud functions, you have to always use with the dependency jar. So you can easily notice the difference by seeing the sizes of this. So this is around 70 MB something, and this will be small. So if you use this normal jar, so the cloud function won't work. So you have to uh, take this and upload it to S3. So in Lambda, actually, we have one more option called as directly zip or jar function, jar file upload. The thing is, this doesn't work because currently our zip file is more than 50 MB. So if it is less than 50 MB, then we can directly upload it from here. Since it is more than 50 MB, so we have to upload it to a S3 bucket and add the object URI of the S3 bucket here. So once that is done, so we can click on save. It will fetch it from the S3 and load it to this function. So I already loaded one jar function. So whatever I showed it, whatever I have shown here, so that the same one I have loaded it here. So once you upload the source code, so the next step would be to update the handler. So here, so this is one of the important part of Lambda function LCA. So handler is basically entry point for LCAs. So so this is a fully classified class name where your logic resides. So this com reltio LC entity is a package name. Before save entity action is a class name. So we can see the similar thing here also. So this com reltio LCA entity actions was a package name, and before save entity action was a class name. And since the logic is here, so I'm making this as an entry point. So once this is also done, so your entire configuration on AWS side is pretty much done. So you just have to copy the name of this function, and you can use this in L3. So to use this in L3 configuration, so you can add it under any entity. So currently I'm adding it under a contact entity. So this entity has first name, last name. So it will build a new attribute called as name, full name builder. So under the entity, you have to define a block called as lifecycle block, and you have to and under lifecycle block you can choose different hooks: before save, validate, after save, all those things. And for Lambda, the prefix is Lambda and binary JSON is compulsory. Binary JSON is basically protocol. So this is also compulsory. And the next part is the function name. So this function name is enough for Lambda, whereas in Google and Azure, we have to give the full URL of this. But in Lambda, we just have to give the function name. So once this is done, you can just update the L3 configuration. And if there is no error in L3 configuration, then the connection is established successfully. So we can directly use Lambda function. So I'll just show a small post demo, so how it would look. So currently, as you can see, I'm passing first name as hi, last name as LCA. So it should build a full name. Uh, we can also check live logs here. We can click on watch CloudWatch live logs. And, click on start. So it has already started. So it is waiting for an event to occur. So I'll just click on send. See, it built a full name as hi and LCA, and last name was it the same, and first name was also the same. And we can see here also on the left hand side that it started the invocation, and it processed everything, and it ended the request ID also. So this was a normal logic for name building. So let's assume like if any of the customer wants to use this LCA for validation. So like since I already showed, like I have written validation logic saying if the last name is GCP LCA or Azure LCA, it should throw an error. And it is throwing an error saying, hey, I'm not Google or Azure function LCA, I'm Lambda function LCA. We can see the same thing in the logs also. So it started and it ended pretty quickly. So this was everything about Lambda LCA. So if anyone has any questions for Lambda, they can ask now.
Pratik, there are questions in the chat. Let's cover them at the end of the session.
Yeah, sure, sir. Okay, so next then I'll directly start with Google function LCA. So in Google function LCA, we use service account impersonation. So where a Reltio's service account will impersonate customer service account to invoke the function in customer's GCP project. So in this also we don't have to get the secrets from customer, just their email ID is enough, service account email ID is enough. From our service account, we will try to impersonate their service account and then invoke the customer function. So this happens in similar way as Lambda. So first we try to get the temporary credentials from Google IAM repo, and this Google IAM repo, like, it validates if this service account has all the necessary permissions or no. If it doesn't have any permission, then this will reject it. If all the permissions are appropriate, then it will give the temporary credentials to Reltio. Then we use the temporary credentials to invoke the function which is hosted in customer's GCP account. So this was just a rough overview. So in the next slides, I'll show you like what are the steps that customers needs to perform so that they can use a Google function LCA. So the first step would be similar in all three LCAs. So they have to create Zendesk for LCA provisioning and give basic details. And in Google Function LCA, we will using these details, Reltio will create a service account and share the service account email with the customers so that they can use it in their um, in their Google GCP cloud. So the service account would look something like this. So it will have environment and tenant ID. So you can easily identify that if this doesn't belong to your tenant, then it won't even, then there is something wrong. And here also there are some validations saying that the service account is specific for tenant. If we try to use it to some other tenant, then it won't work. So once the Reltio shares the service account email, next step would be to create a customer service account. So after creating, customers can allow a Reltio's service account to impersonate by following the steps mentioned in the doc. So this is a pretty simple steps. I'll just show you how it is done as well in the demo step. So once this is done, impersonation part is done. A customer will share their service account email with Reltio, and Reltio will update the tenant's physical configuration. And once the updation is done, and if there are no validation errors, customers can start using Google Function LCS. They can deploy their Google functions and update their L3 and start using it similar to Lambda. Uh, so coming to the service account creation part for Google Function LCA. So first thing would be to navigate to Cloud IAM, the IAM repo of GCP, and click on Create Service Account. So here in the next step, they can give appropriate details like name, description, and then click on Create. This is the important step for the service account creation, where they have to give cloud run invoker role. So this role is sufficient to invoke Google Cloud function. But like if they want to deploy their Google Cloud function, and if they want to like load the zip from S3, upload zip through S3, then these functions are necessary. These roles are necessary. So one thing what they can do is either they can use a different service account to deploy their function and use a different service account to get impersonated. By this, it will be least privilege. By this, it will be least privilege. We can practice least privilege, and or if they wanna use the same account to deploy and get impersonated, then they can give all three roles. So once this is done, they can create the role. The next step would be to set up impersonation permission. So they can click on the service account and go to permissions tab, and under grant, click on grant access. So under principal, so they will add the email ID, service account email ID shared by Reltio, and add these two roles. One is service account user and other one is service account token creator. So using these two roles, we can generate temporary tokens, and we can assume impersonate the customer service account as the user. So once this is done, uh, customer will let know that customer will update the ticket saying it is done, so that Reltio can update the tenant's physical configuration. So once a tenant's physical configuration is updated, uh, customers can deploy their cloud function. So here, like they can follow the GCP's official documentation. So they can deploy it using CLI, or they can deploy it using any other approaches mentioned there. So I have already deployed one function due to lack of time. We can use the same function. So here, unlike a Lambda function, we have to copy the entire URL, and this URL we will use it in the L3 configuration. So let me just copy this, and let me just use it in tenant L3 configuration. So it will be similar to Lambda. The prefix will be Google function and binary JSON. And this is the URL of the function. And once this is done, they can update this. So if there are any connectivity errors, we will get to know in this part. So it updated it. We can even verify it here. It's under contact before say Google function thing. So even we have a similar business logic for Google function LCA. So if we give anything like hi LCA, then it will create a full name for that hi LCA. So if I give something else apart from Google function like hi I'm Azure LCA, then it will say hi, I'm not Azure function LCA. Google functions. Yes. So this is just an example to show how validation logic or how exceptions are worked in LCS. So we can just check the logs as well. So here, so whatever we invoked, so all these logs are here. Post 200, we can see. So this was like about Google function LCA. So like we can take questions at the end of this. So next let's go to Azure function LCA. So in Azure function, we use service principal to as a cross account connection. So in which we create a multi-tenant app registration inside Reltio's Azure tenant, and customer will create a service principal for the app registration. And this creation of service principal will allow Reltio to invoke Azure functions and get tokens from it. So this is also pretty similar to other three. Just the terms are pretty different. So app registration will uh, uh, will get tokens from customer Azure tenant once if they create service principal, and we get token from customer Azure tenant, and we invoke customer hosted function. uh, Steps will be like create Zendesk and share tenant ID environment, and so this is Azure tenant details basically. So the customer has to share their Azure tenant ID. So this will be used in the later stage, not in the beginning stage. So next, what we do is Reltio will create a multi-tenant app registration, and then Reltio will share application ID for the app registration. Once Reltio shares the app registration ID, customers can create a service principal in their Azure tenant. So they can follow the Reltio's doc or Microsoft's official documentation to create a service principal for Reltio's app ID. So this is also pretty simple. It is just one command or one two or three clicks in the portal. So once this is done, what they can do is they can build and deploy their functions, and build the jar function, deploy it, and then the fifth step would be the important step. So here they will configure authentication and share few details with the LTO. So here they will add Microsoft as the identity provider, and either they will create a app registration on their end, uh, or they will use an existing app registration. So the app registration created on their end and which is under authentication, we call it as function app ID. So once this is done, they will share this part and Azure tenant ID with the LTO, with LTO. LTO will update both of this in tenant's physical configuration. And once that is done, customers can directly use Azure function LCA similar to other two if there are no any errors. So I'll just show a quick demo about deploying configuration and what are the parts, things that needs to be shared in Azure. So currently I'm in Azure portal. So I have already created a service principal for one of the app. So next would be to just deploy a function. So I'll click on create function. So here Azure, I mean, have multiple plans, basically hosting plans, so like consumption, flex consumption, premium. So they can use any of this consumption or flex consumption. So Microsoft recommends flex consumption. So we can click on this. So here they can select some necessary details like resource group, function app name, uh, and runtime stack. So here also this is pretty important. So it should be Java 21. If it is anything, if it is 17 or 11, then the function will start crashing it. Then, so once this is done, they can choose their appropriate region to minimize their latency. They can click on review and create. So Azure will validate a few things and it will create a function for you. So this will take a little time, like maybe 3 or 4 minutes. So it has to create a few resources and then create it. So I have already created one Azure function. We can just see in that function. And we'll go to consumption. So once the function is created, so they can just go to this deployment center and upload under source. They can click on publish files, and here click the select, you select the file, zip file, which they get after building the Azure samples. So in Lambda we get jar, like as I mentioned, we get jar, but in Google function and Azure function, we use zip file. So this is Google function. In Google, we use zip file, and even in Azure function, we use the zip file. So this zip file, they have to update it in. They have to select it here, and they have to deploy. So once they deploy it, so it would look something like this. So here, so in Azure, a single function can have multiple entry points. Unlike Google and Lambda, where one function can have a single entry point. So each of the entry points will have different URLs. For example, if you want to see before 70 action, so it will have a similar URL like the function name slash entry point. So once the function is deployed, they can copy the URL, function URL, and note it down. So this is the URL which will be used in L3 configuration. So the first part of deployment is done. So the next would be to set up authentication. So what they can do is they can, I just created one. I'll just show you. Hello. So here, so under settings and under authentication section. So here we have to add the identity provider. So this is the important part which will establish connection between LTO and customer Azure function. So in identity provider, they have to select Microsoft, and in the next step, app registration, they can either create a new app registration or they can pick an existing one. So I'll click on pick an existing one, and I'll choose any one of this app registration. And for this app registration, they have to select the secret expiration. So customers can select based on their uh, internal policies, either 90 days, 365 days, or 2 years. And they have to make sure to rotate this once these are expired, or else this won't. I mean, we will get 403 when we try to invoke this. Let me just select any value, and here under additional checks, so this is the important part. So client application requirement, allow request from specific, they have to select the second option, and they have to add the application ID or the app registration ID shared by LTO. So once they add it here, they can click on save, and they can click on, yeah, they can just click on add, and just save this. So this is the first part of authentication. So usually what we do is we get a token using customer's app ID as audience. So under identity, so under authentication, we can see that we got an identity provider here. So this is customer's function app ID. So this customer should note it down. And the other one is customer's Azure tenant ID. So even they will know their Azure tenant ID and they can share it with us. So in the next step, so we have to add audience. So in the allowed audience, we have to add API slash the customer's app ID. So this default is not required. So this app ID will be similar as the one which is present here. So they can just copy this one and add it here. So once this audience is done, they can click on save. And once everything is updated, they have to share this application client ID, and they have to share the tenant Azure tenant ID. So Azure tenant ID, we can find it here also. So this directory or tenant ID is they can share. So these two parameters are used in tenant's physical configuration. So once customer shares this, we will update the tenant's physical configuration, and we will let the customer know so that they can update their L3 configuration. So I have a ready-made app with me. I'll just show how it is. LCA customer too. So here, so I'll use before 70 action. So I'll copy the URL for this, and I'll open logs tab for the system logs. First, we'll update the L3 configuration for this, and then we will try to invoke it. So this is the same URL of that. So let me just paste it again. Yeah, so it is the same URL. So usually the first invocation will be a little slow because it has to spin up the instance and it has to load everything. So everywhere we will, in all three cloud functions, we will have a little cold start issue. After the first invocation is done, then after that we'll have a normal process. So we can see here under contact, we have added before say Azure functions, and we can post a entity. So here we can see some logs, right? So these logs are because it got invoked once when we updated L3 configuration. We'll see few more if we do it now again. As you can see, it already constructed a new attribute called as name after concatenating it, and it even printed the logs here. So we'll see the validation part also here. So lambda LCA. So again, it got invoked here, and it says, "Hey, I'm not Lambda or Google function LCA, I'm Azure function LCA." So this was all about Azure Function LCA. So there are few additional things in Azure as the metrics part where the customers can check like how their functions are behaving, what are the total execution count, success count, failed execution count, number of HTTP 2xx and 400 and 500 errors. They can also check the previous logs in this invocation section. Uh, so there is little delay in this invocation. It takes around 5 to 6 minutes to appear. So this is from 9:49, the one which was called after when we updated L3 configuration. The duration is pretty high because this was the first time. You can see others are pretty low, 20, 58, 133 millisecond. So they can check logs here and they can debug whatever they want to do, all those things. So this was all about all three LCAs.
Uh,
So any questions?
yeah, Pratik, there are some questions in the chat. Um, I can read it out to you and then you can try and answer those.
Yes,
So
sure.
I assume that the function name Pratik is demonstrating, whether it's Lambda or any other type, must be unique, since duplicate function names cannot exist as they are ultimately embedded within L3 configuration. So
Mhm.
that
Correct, sir.
that is
So
true, right? Correct.
yeah, that is it should be unique. Like if they try to give a duplicate name, then AWS won't allow it. So it
Hmm.
will say the function already exists. Try to give something else.
There's another question from Vinod. It says that is there a way to call these functions to derive and populate other attributes dynamically before saving the changes when the stewards are authoring the data? So that is allowed, but what I wanted to confirm was when you're talking about authoring the data, are you talking about data authoring capability that we have on Realty? It's a separate feature called data authoring, or are you generally talking about when the stewards are creating new data on Realty?
Uh,
Vinod? Yeah.
It is for both,
Yeah.
sort of,
Hmm.
even when they're
Okay.
directly, creating it or updating some of the data.
Mm. Yeah, so yeah, so LCAs LCAs allow you to do that. So you use the before save hook, which means that before saving the data, you can modify or you can execute some other processing on the data before it is being saved. So yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
What is the standard execution time of these functions as best practice? So see, you have to understand that any time that these LCAs take, this is on top of what platform takes for processing of data. So for example, if you're trying to create a record in Reltio and say it takes around 300, 400 milliseconds, and your LCA takes additionally 200 milliseconds. So that means, all of that time gets added depending on when you're executing that LCA, whether it is before save or after save, or because LCA is a synchronous operation, so it does add to the overall duration. So the lower the latency, the better is the overall performance.
Yes, sort of. This is Shrikant.
Yeah.
So, is there any particular specific time limit as a best practice recommended by Realtio for only
So
the LCA function? I'm not talking about the entity platform or anything, just the LCA function.
yeah.
How much the
So
execution time should be?
so until we or as of now we do support native LCAs, right? So the default timer that we put on native LCAs is 100 milliseconds. So we execute that whatever processing that you want to do, it should complete within 100 milliseconds. So you can treat it as the recommended upper limit. But we do have customers or the scenarios where the processing is more, so it needs more processing time. In that case, uh, as long as the customer understands, or as long as you understand that this overall time that the LCA takes, so as long as you're comfortable with that extended time your LCA takes, yeah, I mean, we do increase it in those scenarios. But 100 milliseconds is what I'd say that you should target, or you should try and make it work within the 100 millisecond period.
Mhm. And one additional question that suppose I mean we have different application who are ingesting the data, right? So they
Hmm.
may have different cloud vendors, like somebody using GCP, somebody using AWS. But suppose they are ingesting the same entity data for same attribute. So it is possible that I can call different vendors function for same attribute, right?
Uh,
Like individual, right, which we seen in the
I,
demo, right?
yeah,
So in individual, somebody ingesting data from the GCP function, sorry, GCP
correct.
side, right, and somebody ingesting from AWS, right?
Yeah,
So they can write a different function from different
correct.
vendors, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So we do support cross cloud. So your Reltio tenant might be on AWS, but you want that same function to run on AWS, GCP, and Azure. I think that is supported. But Pratik, if you see any conflict there, do highlight it. But I think that would be supported. Maybe we can also internally test it once.
Yeah,
I
sure,
mean,
which is supported.
yeah, same attribute can be cross verified by running different vendors functions.
Hmm. Yes, it can. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and it will be good that if you share this demo steps or this presentation right over the email, because this
Correct. Yeah.
has the exact step which we follow, rather than the
Uh,
documentation doesn't show proper immediate actions, right?
okay. Sarah, are we planning to share the, or do we always share the deck also, or is it only the
No,
recording on community?
no, the deck does
Okay.
not get shared.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys can send it to specific people if you'd like, but
Mhm.
we can't like post it onto communities.
Okay. Sure. I can share the deck with you. I think I noted down your email ID, and I can share the deck with you.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Saurabh.
Okay. That was Vijay, right? Vijay
Shrikant.
from LA.
Yeah, I
Srikanth.
posted
Okay.
one question, share the document with me also.
Okay.
So I don't know if you got my question there.
Okay. Let me just check.
I can repeat if you want.
Sure. Can you go ahead and ask a question? I think we still have a minute. We'll try to answer it.
Yeah, the question is we are on the Azure platform right now, and I
Mm-hmm.
have a requirement where I want to update the data after the merge, but the event
Okay.
should be generated after the merge. How do I do? So if I
Uh,
generate a message, right, my integration consumes that messages, and even before the
hmm.
update happens, right, they will complete the transaction.
So basically, you want to trigger your processing on the after merge event.
No, after merge, I want to update, but the event should be generated after the update, that merge event.
Um, I I'm not sure if that is possible because through LCAs you cannot control the generation of events. So as soon as the merge is happening, event is triggered. But with the with this after merge hook, you can also execute your own LCA. But I'm not sure if there's a way to delay the event generation until your LCA has executed. But I can check with the team if there's a possible way to do it. I don't think that is supported as of now.
So if I issue an update after match,
Hmm.
and after match I want to update certain attributes which will be on the OV level, and
Okay.
after that the merge happens, is that possible?
Yeah. So after the merge has happened, you can trigger your LCA. I mean, if you want to do that update through LCA, so you can use the after merge hook and write your update code as part of the after merge hook.
Okay. Okay, I need to issue one more update then that time. It will automatically go, right? The event generates after update also. Okay, I got it.
I think we are at time, but I do see a long post from Abhinav. Abhinav, do you want to? Sarah, do we have still more time, or can we take all the other questions over
You
in one?
can, you guys, as much time as you guys have, we have. You can just let me know when we need to cut it off.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still
Okay.
good.
All right. So Abhinav, do you want to just like
Yeah,
speak out?
so
Yeah.
yeah, correct. So I no, obviously I'm exhaustive user of Reltio in my company, and we were using native LCA to manage customizations, which I felt from a feature perspective, I would say that Reltio was providing us that feature, rather than and it came with its own benefits, right? Benefits of you doing a code review, you are managing hosting it within your own environment, so performance and latency were taken into account, and obviously the cost of financial cost of the data, and the transactions
Yeah.
were all managed by you. Now the deprecation is passing all these benefits to us. I don't know passing would be the right word, but it's kind of giving the us the ownership of those, deprecation. So, but is that something where you are going to improve the product to bring in so that customizations are still reduced? And how do we know? We are currently, like, I have many LCAs in my system, and I don't think that I can manage. So my roadmap is already packed up for next year and now till 2027. This, if I change it, it brings in a lot of change for me, which is not adding business value. Frankly, it's a tech debt. So how, is there a possible exception process which you have? And have you also found any cloud cost implication when all these transactions are passed to different, now it will be on my ownership and and I would be paying those costs for each
Yeah.
of these transactions. So have you analyzed all these and figured out
So
how to solve this problem?
yeah, so Abhinav, yeah, so I think thank you for that question. I think that might be something which might be running on other users' mind, but
Yes.
that's a valid point. So, the cost is being passed to the customer, but also think of it in the way that this code belongs to you. You control the amount of processing that you want to do with this code, right? So, in a way, any Reltio supported feature out of the box that is hosted on Reltio's platform, and we are happy to support those features. So it's not like we create a feature and then we host it on customers' platform and ask the customers to bear the cost. Similarly, a code that you have created, you have the ownership of it. You are deciding the amount of processing that you do using that code. So I think it is fair to say that although Reltio was bearing the cost for all of those functions until now, but it is
Mhm.
also fair that you manage any additional processing that you want to do on top of it. We are continuously improving the platform. You would see new features. For example, we recently enhanced a lot of survivorship related features. For DVF, we started supporting new functions. For cleansing, also, we're coming up with the relationship attribute support for cleansing on relationship attributes. So we are continuously building those new features so that dependency on LCA is reduced, but there always will be some corner scenarios or those cases which the platform does not support, and that is why this feature is so powerful. It lets you just do anything that currently the platform doesn't support. You can just do it using the LCA. So we understand that the feature is important, it is very useful, and that is why we want to continue supporting it. But just that there's a lot of overhead for both Reltio and the customers to manage the feature the way it is currently being supported. I think if you create a new LCA, it will take at least 2 weeks for you to reach out to Reltio team. We do the review, we give you the feedback, then you you implement that feedback, you again reach out to us. So it's a lot of effort that both of us are wasting on making this like life. But with this cloud functions, I think we are eradicating all of that. And again, like I was saying earlier, if you need to debug it, if you need to make changes on the LCA, everywhere Reltio gets involved, and then we invest a lot of time into managing those. So I think the main idea is that we want to get away from that process. We give you complete ownership and accountability for the code that you're creating in your own environment.
I think the flip side of the coin is that, oh, I know we baked in the timelines which you stated, but we are
Hmm.
losing a lot of knowledge from our product teams, reviewing perspective, right? We can create any kind of customization in our own cloud infra, and
Hmm.
it would hamper the performance, and ultimately you are not accountable for it. I understand it, but you are
Hmm.
not even seeing it, right? So how does it help overall in improving, either moving out of customization? That would be a ideal state to be to
Hmm.
go to, right?
Correct.
Maybe that this is one small step towards it, but I
Hmm.
think it feels more that now we are going to lose a lot of benefits of you seeing on the product engineering side and we seeing it from our side. It will be a lot of disconnect if we are passing all the customization in the local environment. So that would be a, I feel personally, is a more challenging for me to
Hmm.
deal with, because I don't know how do I say that this is a performance intensive and this is not, right? So it is something which I'm not able to kind of comprehend of what can be the impact because of this.
Hmm. So what we can help you with is, we can, I think we already have some documentation around the best practices. We can ensure
Mm.
that the kind of reviews that our team does, we can at least have documentation. Or maybe, Pratik,
Mhm.
is it possible to create some kind of an automated way to review the code? Do you think that that is feasible?
We'll discuss this, Saurabh.
Hmm.
We will create documentations, best practices, like we
Hmm.
just like native LCS, how we shared with them.
Hmm.
It will be almost similar. We can maybe
Yeah.
create one and publish for all three.
Yeah, and I think that's a good suggestion, and it's a valid concern, So what I'll also discuss with my team is if we can create some kind of a script that you can run on your code, and maybe
Mhm.
identify the most common scenarios of that can cause performance issues and so on. But that needs more discussion. It is not something that I can promise immediately, but I'll definitely try to look into it.
And
And
just
regarding
one
the
thing,
timelines,
uh,
sorry.
sorry, you can touch upon the finance because that that would be key. But I think regarding the cross-platform users here.
Hmm.
So right now, my Reltio SaaS is hosted on AWS, and we are
Hmm.
an Azure-based company. Now we have a cross-cloud interaction that needs to happen. So do you have a guidance of whether it will make sense us to move our AWS cloud, Reltio, to Azure so that it becomes more efficient from an Azure to Azure kind of transaction, or is it that there is no impact to cross cloud?
Pratik, do you know if there's any latency impact, additional latency impact because of cross cloud?
No, so there won't be any like additional latency,
Hmm.
network latency impact for cross cloud, because at the end of the day, even if it is Lambda AWS to AWS or Azure to Azure, we are
Mhm.
doing a HTTP or a REST call. So there is, it's not like in AWS to AWS we run behind a private network or something like that. So it is running. I mean, we will make a public REST call. So if you deploy your Azure function in the same region as the as the tenant's hosted region, then there should be no performance, no latency issues actually.
Hmm.
So do we need
So
to
I
consider same region implementation? Is
Yeah, so while deploying function, you should deploy it in the same region as your tenant, basically.
so performance wise, I think that will be best if as long as it is in the same region, the cloud does not does not play a role. But I would suggest that moving your Reltio tenant to a different cloud, that's
Hmm.
I mean, that has its own, it will take its own sweet time. It's not very simple because the process of creating the backup, moving it to a different cloud, creating a different account in the cloud, and all of that is very complicated. So I would suggest that unless there's like a very strict need to do that, I would say that yeah, don't go on that path.
Abhinav, don't do that one, right? Don't even think. I
Okay.
also wanted to move from Azure to AWS,
Okay.
but it's
Yeah.
not a good idea. They don't have a
Okay.
Yeah.
proper plan for that.
Okay.
Okay.
And good to, and what if I have migrated all the LCA? I'm going into an ideal state scenario here. Okay. We have migrated all our LCAs into, Azure functions because we are Azure.
Hmm.
What we, if we see that it's not working well,
Not working well as in the performance and all.
performance, yeah, things are not satisfactorily accepted. I'm part of, tech world, but
Hmm.
if my business says no, this is not what we expected, what
Yes.
is our exception process here?
Uh, so based on the testing that we've performed, what we
Mhm.
see that there should not be any performance impact. So what I'll
Okay.
suggest is maybe you can try it out with one LCA, something that you think is maybe more complicated. Let's try it out with that one single LCA, see how it performs, and then think about migrating all the other. I'm the product manager for LCAs. If something is not working as expected, you can reach out to me, create a Zendesk ticket, I'll get involved, and then let's figure out a path together.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Abhinav, one more
Yeah.
question to you, right? How is your
Mm.
performance with LCS currently, right? They were always saying that LCS is very bad performance. Are you getting the what is needed for you?
Yes. So
Oh,
I
that is
have
great.
not, yeah, I have not faced anyone complaining that this LCA is not working or that LCA is not working.
Okay.
But
So if your
you know,
native LCAs are working, I think you should not have any problems with the cloud functions here.
So, what is the volume of your data? Sorry to ask if you can.
I I have right now very limited data, and that's why I'm
Okay.
concerned here. Okay,
Okay.
very limited data for only certain data, entities we call it. But
Okay.
by mid of this year, the volume would significantly increase. Okay, and we are trying to migrate from existing system into Reltio. So I don't know and that's where the scare comes from. Me, moving so much data into this, and then suddenly I end up in having, because you migrated LCA, you have a problem. So it becomes a challenge for me of how do I debug it, whether it's an LCA problem, latency problem, or is it the volume of data which I have loaded that has created problem. So it's a
Yeah.
and that's why my roadmap is really severely impacted because of this. Okay, so I need to understand what are the exception cases where we can handle. One of our discussions internally has been that we try it out one LC at a time and see how it performs. But now I am in a pharma world, so for me, any change is a 3 month effort. So it becomes I feel I have only limited time to get this done. So it's a yeah, I am not able to show the value to the business because of the tech debts which this is bringing in. So yeah, so multiple things to discuss, Saurav, with you once we start this
Mhm.
journey. So, but we are trying to
Yeah,
figure out how to do it properly.
Hey,
yeah.
Avinav,
Thanks very much.
how many
Uh,
LCs do you have right now?
Good
20 plus.
question.
Yeah, 20 plus.
Sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
20 plus. Yeah.
Okay. And yes, I'm on the same thing. We are just starting our journey on the LCA, but just wanted to aware that how much the time it requires and how much it will hamper the execution, right?
Yeah.
I just read that in the documentation of realty documentation that there should be a staging layer, right? If the amount of LC is high and the time taken is more, right? So rather than LCA running on the cloud and verify the data, the staging layer should do that verification first and then load the data to Realtio. Is that any scenario, this is a question to Saurabh or maybe the team, that
Mm.
is there any scenario such happen from any customers they prefer to
So
do this?
yeah, so see, it depends on the kind of processing that you want to do. So for example, you
Mm,
have certain records that you want to load in Reltio,
mm,
but with those certain records, when you load into Reltio, you also want to generate an ID. Okay. So
mm.
either you can generate that ID while the record is being loaded, or you can already generate an ID and then that generated ID is loaded along with the record. So if you can create a process where the LCA does not run during execution, if you have a scenario where you can already have all the processing done before loading the data, then obviously you get away from running an extra LCA to implement that process.
Yeah, because we are in phase of migration, and in our in-house MDM platform, we have 600 validation rules in the form of Sparkle queries. So in
Okay.
our right now, the current platform, we have a staging layer where the incoming data verify, validate from these 600 rules on the staging layer, and once the staging layer verifies correctly, then it writes to the final database. So I'm just
Okay.
thinking about for the potential cases in the
Hmm.
real scenarios when we migrate off, right?
Hmm.
So,
What I'll suggest is if you have PS support or if you have an implementation partner,
mhm,
there's something that, I mean, maybe it is on this call, we might not be able to make
mhm.
the right decision, but discuss it with your implementation partner. I think with Reltio support, we should be able to come up with a solution that best meets your needs.
Okay.
I think we are well over time. Maybe
Yeah.
any follow-up questions? My email ID is saurabh.agarwal@reltio.com. So you can send it over to me or to Sarah, and then we'll try to get you all the answers.
Yeah, and you guys should receive weekly emails from me for community newsletter. If you are not getting those emails, you likely need to make sure that you get the community membership. So you have to go into the community membership page to register. It's really easy. It's just like your email, email and name. And then we do have two community shows that are coming up December 3rd and December 10th, I want to say. It could be the 11th. But yeah, we have two shows that are coming up a week apart from each other in December, just so that we could squeeze them in before the holidays. So thank you everybody for your time. Please keep an eye out for those emails and also on community for events and other community shows that we'll be having.
Thank
All
you,
right.
sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.